All right, so welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode number 299, continuing this final part of my little conservative manifesto. And we're going to start here with healthcare, and let's get a fact straight up front. Healthcare is not a right. It's not a human right. So this sign is wrong. It's great to have healthcare insurance, and that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about healthcare being a human right. And there have been attempts, of course, to at healthcare reform, with probably the biggest known example being Obamacare. And the federal government first got in the act with both Medicare and Medicaid that arose out of Johnson's war on poverty nonsense, which incidentally didn't eradicate poverty. But Obamacare inserted the feds into an area that states traditionally regulated. Surprisingly, the Supreme Court found Obamacare to violate the Commerce Clause, then determined it was a tax scheme, and they rubber stamped it. Since then, conservatives and Republicans have tried to get rid of it through repeal, which is all well and good, but this guy stuck a finger in Trump's eye and Congress failed to do so. But the problem for me is that the Republicans did not have an alternative to Obamacare other than repeal. Now, ideally, any insurance plan should be carefully tailored to the needs of individuals, but at the end of the day, it is an insurance plan, and insurance plans are based on risk assessments. Take the case of car insurance. States set minimum levels of coverage, and you can then add on to that coverage or exceed the minimums if you want. When the insurance is determined, the insurer looks at a series of factors like your driving record, your age, how many miles you drive, where you work, where you park your car, etc. They then establish a premium and you pay it. Now, your health care is certainly more important than insuring your car, and a yearly premium can get quite expensive. So how do we work on this? Well, first of all, we need to establish some minimum standards on what is to be covered and what a reasonable price would be for that coverage, assuming one even needs to use that insurance in any given year. And I would say that, for instance, preventive care services should be most definitely covered, and what should it entail, and should it be quote unquote free? And the concept of being free must be made with some context. For example, we know that people of certain ages become more susceptible to cancer. Hence, prostate exams, colonoscopies, and mammograms should certainly be included. And I would include the following: diabetes screenings and annual blood pressure screenings, and well baby visits, and at least annual adult checkups, and certain childhood vaccinations. And I'll have more vaccinations in a bit. The problem as I see it is the proliferation of medical specialties because it's more lucrative to be a specialist. Don't get me wrong, there will always be a need for specialists. It's just that we need more general practitioners in this country, especially in rural and underserved areas. So to achieve this, perhaps the government can finance medical education through a grant program whereby the participant can have their medical education paid for, after which they serve as a general practitioner in an underserved area. And if they fail to complete that service, the grant would revert to a loan. And while doing this, they can certainly pursue a specialty if they so desire at their expense. The fact is that increased preventive care decreases problems later. And we need to make health insurance tailored to the needs of individuals. Like, for instance, couples of childbearing years should have contraception services covered if they don't want to have kids. Healthy lifestyle choices should be rewarded in insurance premium consideration, like, exercise or proper diet and that type of thing. Now, any federal aid for health insurance should be phased out completely after a certain income level, while those under a certain age, perhaps there should be caps on premiums based on age and risk factors. I firmly believe that if there was clarity, there would be competition in the healthcare insurance markets in all states, and that would certainly benefit the consumer to do their shopping. Now, not every employer provides benefits, and even if they did, they become prohibitively expensive for the employee. In some cases, And in many cases, people are simply too poor, and actually the poor eat up a huge chunk of healthcare dollars in this country, since they are precisely the ones to engage in unhealthy lifestyles. Of course, we have Medicaid for those people, and the federal chunk of that money should be given to states as a block grant and for the states to then determine its use. Medicare for those over the age of 65 should likewise be an annual voucher given to recipients to shop for their own insurance plan that meets their particular needs. Now, I'm not going to get into any minute details of healthcare reform because that could be the subject of a whole series of presentations. But the underlying theme is to return healthcare insurance to the individual and tailor coverage to their particular needs and wants, and increasing the pool of insurers in each state to increase competition. And if that means the creation of niche insurers, then that should be an option. Now, I'll have a whole series on healthcare reform in the future, but two final points in this area before I move on. First, we definitely need to rein in Big Pharma, and we can start by banning television ads for drugs. The United States and New Zealand are the only two countries that allow this. Restless leg syndrome. Give me a fucking break. And we need to shut the door between pharmaceutical companies and government regulators. The government should determine the safety of the drug and the efficacy of the drug. Then get the hell out of the way. They should not hold patents on drugs or obtain royalties from them. Secondly, vaccinations. All right. There are many people out there called anti-vaxxers, and they really come out of the woodwork during and after COVID. So listen, I had COVID. I smoke cigarettes, and I'm no spring chicken. It was the fucking flu, okay? I lived. I'm here today. I also got the shot, and I got fucking sick. Twice, especially after that damn booster, so never again. And my wife gets the flu shot every year and has 2 bouts of flu every year. I don't get the shot, and I think I got the flu once in 3 years, so I'm not so sure about the COVID or flu vaccines, but I am sure about others. There are those who blame childhood vaccines for every malady, from autism to attention deficit disorder to God knows what else they come up with. I don't believe that. There's a lack of evidence for it, although they'll likely point you to some obscure study somewhere. I look at these people as germ freeloaders. We've eradicated many childhood diseases in this country because of childhood vaccines. Because they didn't get the disease is because people don't carry it and pass on the disease anymore because of vaccines. So that argument is just circular bad logic. Now, yes, there is such a thing as herd immunity, but why allow members of the herd to become sick, paralyzed, or even die in the hopes this herd immunity spares you eventually? Herd immunity is not an overnight panacea, but vaccines are. Besides, if there's any truth to their argument that vaccines cause all these bad things, which I doubt, it's likely not the vaccine, but possibly the preservative that causes it. And I liken these people who are against vaccines to those who fear genetically modified foods. The genetic modification of food has been going on since this guy started messing around with peas in a monastery. Ooh, mRNA. Same guy, he just didn't know it or call it that. Anyway, let's move on off the subject of healthcare to crime in America. And let's get a big bugaboo out of the way early. There is something intrinsic in black culture that makes their statistics when it comes to crime go way out of whack. And it's usually black on black crime. Well, they'll tell you it's a systemic racism, but that's just a bullshit excuse. It's a whole different subject that I don't wish to get into right now. But let's face the fact that crime plagues the black community, and it's something within black urban culture that is the underlying problem. And moving along. The death penalty, people ask me how I can be Catholic pro-life, yet still support the death penalty. Well, because I'm pro-life and Catholic doesn't mean I take my cues and my beliefs and follow some dude in Rome. Actually, I'm pro-innocent life, and let me show you how this works. So somebody commits a heinous crime. They lure kids to their house, they rape them and murder them and bury them in their basement. Others have absolutely no remorse. Some admit to their actions. Some are even proud of their actions. But consider this. It costs a nationwide average of $31,000 per year to house a prisoner for murder. I think it's $128,000 in California, just for murder. A person found guilty of murder or who admitted to the murder. And the average length of time spent on death row is over 22 years. So that's $694,000 per death row inmate times 2,070 people on death row, or over $1.4 billion spent keeping scumbags alive, fed, housed, nursed, what have you, in some cases having their gender changed. Now, there are exceptions, obviously. Some people are later exonerated by DNA evidence or what have you, but still, simply from a financial standpoint, in the most obvious cases, it pays to execute the bad eggs of society. And consider this. A human life in the womb did not get a trial. They did not get due process. They did not get anything a convicted killer gets. Not even $31,000 a year. It gets put in a trash can as medical waste in the case of abortion. So, fuck you on that argument. Prison labor is not servitude or slavery if the prisoner consents, despite the pay, and the story. Now, one area that most certainly needs reform is civil asset forfeiture, where the police confiscate private property, including cash, from alleged illegal gotten gains. This started off as a fine idea. Why not use the money confiscated in drug raids to finance drug education or the police? But it soon turned into policing for profit, and there are too many examples of abuse to catalog here. Look at them up. Police brutality. I can probably show you some statistics that white cops shooting unarmed black suspects is false. In fact, probably more whites are shot by cops than blacks. It's just that the black victims get the headlines. It's also true that the black community jumps to conclusions before all the facts are known. A little recent case, take the case of Carmelo Anthony there on the left in Texas, who stabbed a white kid on the right at a track meet. Whether the victim said something or even pushed Anthony, a knife to the heart is no defense, and that's what I mean by something wrong within the black community. But why was this kid carrying a knife to a track meet? And what's with the violent response? And there certainly are cases of police brutality out there, and those rogue cops should be held accountable criminally. These five police officers are from Memphis, Tennessee, and they went around beating up people. And we may have to reconsider qualified immunity. If a police force shows a pattern of physical abuse and members are found criminally liable along the way, those departments should be held financially responsible through civil suits. Perhaps better training or restraint would be shown, but overall, I really don't think it's a major problem. Should felon voting rights be restored? Well, assuming the person keeps a clean nose for a certain period of time, I don't know, 5, 7 years, whatever, I have no problem with it. However, allowing actual prisoners to vote? Oh, hell no. Further, I hate the idea of so-called hate crime legislation or designating something a hate crime. Take the case of this dick, Dylan Roof, in South Carolina. This little fucker was certainly motivated by hate, and he should suffer the ultimate consequence for his murderous actions, and he will, hopefully. Proponents will say, well, what about those hate-motivated crimes that don't result in death? Shouldn't they see enhanced sentencing? No. Just give them a maximum allowed and let it go at that. Enhancing the sentence in this case does not erase the underlying hatred. Now, a lot of people are in jail on drug charges. And a lot of states have legalized marijuana, yet despite legalization, there are still pot-related busts. The states shown in green have legalized marijuana. The red states have it illegal, and the blue ones here have medical marijuana. This could be fixed by simply removing marijuana from the list of Schedule 1 drugs, and somebody needs to have the balls to do it. Now, as for legalization, I think that should be up to the states, but they, however, usually price themselves out of the market with costs, taxes, and regulations. So if the goal is to drive up the marijuana black market, states are doing a terrible job of it. I further support President Trump's pardon of the majority of those arrested and serving sentences for the riot at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. While still being characterized by some crybabies as an insurrection, the facts are that it was at most a riot and at least a joke of an insurrection. I mean, seriously, this is the leader of an insurrection. Give me a fucking break. And incidentally, the only death that day was Ashley Babbitt, who was shot and killed by a trigger-happy DEI hire Capitol Police official who should be sitting in a jail right about now. Speaking of pardons, I support a pardon being issued to Edward Snowden. Now, I know this is controversial from the conservative side, and I can give many reasons why I believe this, but that would be a whole other episode. Likewise, just pardon Julian Assange for the same reasons with provisos. Besides, he's been more or less neutered now anyway. Finally, I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. And we have a plethora of gun laws now designed to keep firearms out of the hands of bad guys. We don't have a gun violence problem in America. We have a violence problem, plain and simple. Enforce the laws on the books now, and you help solve that problem. Regardless, the pussies behind gun control efforts couldn't tell the difference between two firearms if they had the manual in front of them. They're speaking from emotion, not their brains, and I doubt David Hogg has a brain. And even if we banned every firearm in the country, or even limited them to one per household, there would still be crime. Regardless, we've tried this prohibitions once before. It didn't work out too well in the 1920s with something that wasn't even constitutionally protected. And anyway, that's it. I want you to have a great day and a more pleasant tomorrow. Thank you for listening.